This lesson is about angle relationships that all occur around one vertex. Now remember, an angle's vertex is that common endpoint that the two rays share. So we've got 5 different terms that we have to make sure that we are familiar with. The first one is complementary angles. By definition, these are two angles that add up to, that's what sum means, add up to 90 degrees. So I know in this first little drawing here that the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B has to be 90. If they do add up to 90, then those two angles are considered complementary. They could be separate, or like you can see in the second example right here, they could be together with that little right angle symbol in there. In this case, I know the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 90. Okay? The second type of angle that we need to know are supplementary angles. These are two angles that add up to 180 degrees. Again, they could be separate, like angle A and angle B, and in this case we'd say the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B is 180, or they could be together on the same line. In this case we would say the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. Okay? The third type of angles are what are called adjacent angles. Now, adjacent simply means they're right next to each other. Technically, it says they have a common vertex, they share a common side, and there's actually a third part that says no interior points in common. Angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent. We don't know what they add up to. We don't know anything else about them. All that we know is they're right next to each other. They're called adjacent angles. If we take supplementary and adjacent and put them together, we get this thing that's called a linear pair. Now, this should look very familiar. That was that second example that I just did with you guys under supplementary. If these two angles form a line, hence the term linear pair, if these two angles form a line, then we know that they also must add up to 180. Measure of angle 1 plus a measure of angle 2 has to equal 180. The final kind of angle that happens at one vertex is what is called vertical angles. Now, vertical angles are two angles formed by two lines that are intersecting each other. And those angles are directly across from each other. All right? We also know, and this is a big key, that if we're dealing with vertical angles, those vertical angles are congruent. All right? So, in this grouping right here, I know that angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. I can conclude that the measure of angle 1 has to equal the measure of angle 3. I have a second pair of angles formed by two intersecting lines that are directly across from each other, angle 2 and angle 4. They are also known as vertical angles. Therefore, I also know here the measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle 4. All right? So the first thing we need to be able to do is identify the angle. I'm going to do a lot of examples so that you guys have a reference to go back when you're working on your homework. In number 1, I know angle A and angle B add up to 90 degrees. Therefore, I would say that this pair is complementary. Number 2, I know that angle A and angle B are across from each other, and they're formed by two intersecting lines, so I know these angles are vertical. Number 3, I know these two angles are next to each other. A and B are next to each other. That makes them adjacent. I know that A and B add up to 180. That makes them supplementary. If a pair is both adjacent and supplementary, we call them a linear pair. And number 4, I have angle A and angle B. I know they're next to each other, but I don't know anything else about those two angles. Therefore, those would just be called adjacent. So now let's put some measurements on here. Now the first example here, number 5, I kind of put a little twist in this. This is a harder problem. I know if I go all the way around this circle, there's a total of 360 degrees. So to figure out what I'm dealing with for these angles, I'm going to start off by taking 360 minus 297, which gives me, gives me 63 degrees. That's how far it is from here to here. Okay? I know that those two angles now represent that scenario of angle addition. I know that B plus 29 has to equal 63, and if I subtract 29 from both sides, I find that B is equal to 34. All right, number 6, I look at angle B and the other angles that they give me, and I recognize this is a complementary scenario. Because it's complementary, I know I can write the equation B plus 33 equals 90. How do I know 90? Because that's what complementary means. I'm going to now solve it algebraically by subtracting 33, and I get B is equal to 57. Okay, next one. I look at B and 43, and I look at the way they're presented. I know that those form a linear pair. And because they form a linear pair, I know I can write the equation B plus 43 is 180. I'm going to subtract 43 from both sides, and I get B is equal to 137. Number 8, I see 58 and B. I recognize they're across from each other. That makes them vertical. I know that vertical angles are equal. So my answer is literally B is equal to 58. So now let's ramp it up. Now let's look at some more challenging questions, but similar. Okay, so in this first one, on this one, I can't take this part of it off of 360. So now I got to think a little bit bigger picture. Here's what I'm thinking. If I take that angle, 2x plus 1, and add to it the 25, and add to that the x minus 104, I know that all of them have to add up to 360. Now I'm going to put a 1 in front of that x just to remind myself, don't forget about it. And the first thing I'm going to do here is combine like terms. So 2x and 1x, that gives me 3x. I have 1 plus 25 minus 104. So that would be 26 minus 104, or negative 78. So I'm going to write minus 78 equals 360. I'm going to add 78 to both sides. I get 3x is equal to 438. Divide both sides by 3. And I get, 438 divided by 3, which would be 146. Okay, I look at number 10. Number 10, what do I know? I know those are vertical angles, and I know vertical angles are congruent or equal in measure. Now I create that equation. Now I'm going to solve the equation, this time by just simply dividing by 2, and I get x is 38. Let's see what else they got in store. Number 11. All right, number 11 here, it looks to me like they're saying those two angles, that's a linear pair. So because they're a linear pair, I know that 4x plus 3x plus 5 has to equal 180. Combine like terms, I get 7x plus 5 is equal to 180. Subtract 5, so 7x is equal to, let me write that down. Subtract 5 from both sides, there we go. So 7x is equal to 175. Divide by 7, and I get x is equal to 25. I just had to double check my arithmetic there. All right, now look at number 12. Number 12, I can, because I know this is a number here, I can take that shortcut to figure out what that angle given is equal to. And that shortcut would be take 360 minus 294, which would give me 360 minus 294, or 66. What does that tell me then? I know that x minus 61 plus 29 equals 66. That's the angle addition postulate. All right, I'm going to combine like terms here. So I have x minus 32 is equal to 66. And then I'm going to add 32 to both sides. And I get x is equal to 98. I hope this helps. Remember, you can always pause, rewind, do stuff like that. Put the example problem up there as you're doing your homework. Just please take your time and get the assignment finished. Good luck.